welcome to Let's Talk About a series spotlighting leaders, authors, artists, marketers, creators, entrepreneurs, and brands, sharing tips and expert advice on business, media, technology, and frankly, life in general. I'm your host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, Forbes contributor, investor, and advisor. Today, we're talking to the formidable and amazing Margarita Arrigada, founder and CEO of Valde Beauty and former chief merchant at Sephora. Good morning, Margarita, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Cynthia. Good morning. I'm so happy to be with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Ditto, ditto, ditto. Um, I want to know, and I know my listeners are going to be really interested in this. You have a long history in fashion and beauty. Like, how did that actually start? Where did you start?
So I started on the selling floor in, believe it or not, behind the clinic counter, working part-time while I was going to school. I studied at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising and majored in design and fashion. And I thought that I wanted to go into fashion, which is what I did. And so I worked my way up in stores and in the buying office and spent quite a few years in fashion. I launched Diane von Furstenberg way back then and Kenzo and so many great designer brands. And then I ventured into the home area for quite a few years and transformed that. And I never thought that I would end up in beauty because my impression of cosmetics was from a department store. I grew up in Macy's for many, many years. And so, but one fine day, Sephora came calling at the end of 2003, a few years after they had launched in the US. And, it was so different. It wasn't, it was very entrepreneurial. And so I answered that call. So that's my history. I've been just full circle, fashion, home, and beauty.
And in beauty, you were, at Sephora. I mean, that's a big, big job. I mean, you know, chief merchant, is tell people what chief merchant actually means. First, I think a lot of people, unless you're in the industry, I think a lot of people don't know what that means. But
Yeah.
what were you responsible for while you were there? And I would imagine as one of the only females in that leadership role and a Latina as well.
So I joined as a head of color cosmetics, actually, which is kind of their calling card. It was their calling card. It was the largest part of their business, and I was in that role for a few years before I oversaw merchandising as VP of merchandising, and I had responsibility over all the categories as well as planning, inventory, forecasting, all that fun stuff. And then in the last few years, I spent 11 years at Sephora, and the last few years as chief merchant. And really in the head of merchandising role, you're responsible for the entire business unit and the direction and the point of view and the scouting and the development and creation of trends, brands, the works and the future strategy and and driving the experience in store and what you want to be known for. And the chief merchant role, it really is very much about having a far more forward thinking strategy on how are you going to evolve the organization, what are you going to be known for, what will you diversify, what will you invest in, what will you take risks on, and test. And so a much larger aspect, but it was a golden, beautiful time experience because I was at the ground level of what has now become, an enormous, enormous beauty industry. Way back then, there were no indie beauty brands. It was just, legacy brands. And so it's been an incredible experience and journey.
I mean, you guys broke so many new brands. I mean, the list is endless of
Yeah.
all the new kind of indie brands that came in that became massive hits. No one realizes Tata Harper was tiny. The Ordinary was tiny. These people were like really small brands that came in and now like were purchased by Estee Lauder or L'Oreal. Like they're
For
just
billions.
billions. They're mega brands now, and you were really responsible for seeing that future and bringing in store. And I think if I'm not correct, not misquoted. I think you're also responsible for that amazing checkout experience that we all have when we go through and we can pick all our little sample products, the little smaller version products that we
Yes, it used to be
all the
called Beauty to Go, but yes, I mean, so much of my responsibility was driving productivity and improving their productivity. So I
yeah,
was just really, really, really micro focused on how can I get more business out of this space.
yeah,
But I also wanted to share that I wasn't the only female. The executive team was made up of females for sure. And our CFO and obviously our CEO were they were males, but I was the first woman of color and Latina. And it was an important it was an incredible experience for me because I originally almost didn't take the job because I didn't see myself in the concept.
yeah,
And so I thought to myself, how can Sephora is a French concept,
yes,
which is fine. But I didn't think that I could lead or influence a color cosmetics area of which I didn't see myself represented and or welcomed. And so part of me joining Sephora was really with the ability to influence a change, a multicultural change at that time is what we called it. And it was hard because it meant, that I had to also influence the industry,
yeah,
influence the culture within the store. And it was, even though rationally it all sounds good, unless you're a woman of color, unless you're a person of color,
yeah,
you just don't really understand and discern how tough it is to make that change. And
yeah.
yet the change was made, and Sephora is super diverse and inclusive.
Yeah, definitely. And they've launched so many, they've launched a lot of women of color brands also. Let's lean into kind of life after Sephora. I think people probably thought you were gonna retire, maybe, right? And then like
But I was told.
I mean, whoops, that didn't really work. So tell me about Valde, which is an amazing, amazing product, and
Thank
the
you.
reason that you wanted to create a change in the marketplace and why this is the change you're making today.
It was a very serendipitous type of a moment of when I decided to create the brand because I never saw myself as a brand founder. I always thought that my role in life would be to exercise somebody else's vision. But I was super inspired by my mother. I'm Peruvian and daughter of an immigrant mother who gave up a lot, sacrificed a lot. She was a big inspiration in my life, and she was a powerful, little petite but powerful woman. And she just, wearing lipstick throughout her life was just so significant and important, and empowered her. And she wore it defiantly. It was like it was armor to her. And my mother passed away right at the time, right before I left Sephora. So she was certainly pivotal on, me making a decision to step down. And when I was putting a photo album of her life for my family, I looked at all the photos, and even when she was young, that she was wearing lipstick. And I had this profound reflection at the end of her life. She suffered from dementia and she did not recognize anyone. But every time I took out that lipstick to apply on her, she would just perk up and she'd be so
Yeah,
happy, and she'd pucker up ready for application and look in the mirror and kiss the mirror because she saw a beautiful woman. And I remember thinking, what happened with that narrative in beauty? What happened with this intrinsic value of what beauty, means to people in a significant way? And so I set off to pay homage to my mom. And when I thought about, well, wow, if I were to buy a beautiful lipstick for her that had some significance, what would I buy? And honestly, while there's a lot of beautiful products out there, nothing delivered to the level of expectation that I was wanting to pay homage. And so I set off to create that. And soon thereafter, once I got going, that business aspect kicked in.
Mhm.
It didn't start out that way. It started out as an homage to my mother and then to women, which is an important part of my platform and my narrative, to really honor and celebrate women and our strength and our resilience and and our potential. And and the business kicked in, and I realized, probably because I came from fashion, it's funny. I
Yeah,
honestly believe that much of what helped me succeed at Sephora was the fact that I didn't come from beauty.
right.
And so I didn't have that conventional wisdom. And I thought to myself, why can't beauty be more significant?
Mhm.
Beyond the utilitarian aspect and the function. And why can't it play the way so many other categories, watches or, spirits, there's collectible, wines.
I think.
Why can't beauty be more significant and be worthy of that investment? And so I've set off to do that and to try and do it in a sustainable way. And what I never realized is that this brand would become me and I would become the brand. And now it is my way to express a strong point of view. And, I created Valde. Valde is a Latin word for very. It is the first part of my mother's name. And so I wanted to create a brand that came from a perspective of a Latina woman.
Mhm.
And in my reflection of what life was like in a Latin American country, and the beauty and glamour of what I experienced from my mother and in my life. And so, in a very glam way, in a very extra way. And so, even though it's subtle, it definitely has Latina roots for me, which was important. I feel very, very proud to pay homage to my lineage.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's how that started. And so there, I'm on my way.
And Valde Beauty is all, it is a lipstick, but it's not really I mean, yes, it is lipstick, but it's in such a different shape and form. And it's a piece of art, it's a piece of jewelry. It's when
Thank
you
you.
get dressed up, you're going out someplace, you pull that armor out, and each one of them is intricately made. I don't know if you have one you can show on the video side. I'm sure you probably do have one.
Well, I just
But
happen to have one.
sorry for our podcast listeners, but you're going to have to go to valdebeauty.com to see all the amazing treasures that she's built.
Thank you.
They are engravable. Again, they come packaged beautifully. It's
Thank you.
the lipstick inside. The colors are amazing. They're rechangeable. You can change them out and
They're
use the
refillable,
armor
yes.
and pick the armor that's been,
Yes.
carefully crafted with artisans. This is not Cody. This is not, a 2.99. Like, this is not that. This is a prestige over $100 lipstick in a it's not even a case to me.
May I call
It's
them
like it's
vessels? And you're absolutely
vessel.
right, they're artistic.
Yeah.
For me, the word vessel has a lot of meaning and significance because we are vessels.
Yeah.
And my brand is very thoughtful and purposeful in that way. And so it really is a statement. It's a statement of self identity and in a remembrance of our worth. And so I've put a lot, there's no branding on it. And to your point, it's because I wanted it to look like a piece of art,
Mhm.
which it is. Many of them are handcrafted. And so it's an investment, but that you get this return on investment because it is refillable, and you put the price where it matters, which for me, coming from, again, outside of beauty, I just always was blown away by the fact that 85%, 80 to 90% of what the customer pays is packaging,
Yeah.
which you throw away,
Yeah.
which is surreal, right? It's kind of insanity. And so I've been, my point of view is let's decouple this. Let's put the price where it belongs. You want to pay for formula, just, you're gonna try the formula, just pay for the formula.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the way I see the future. But thank you. They're very purposeful, beautiful products. And eventually I will launch other beauty categories, not just lipstick, that also work in the vessels.
Awesome. I mean, they're exquisite,
Thank
frankly.
you.
They're there. And again, for my podcast listeners, you've got to go look at Valde Beauty. You're going to be blown away by things you've never seen before in a lipstick in these vessels that are just, again, like I said, exquisite. And we
True.
collectibles, pieces of art, they're prestige beyond. And I love the We Are Vessels. That's really amazing. One of the things I wanted to ask you, you do an amazing job supporting other Latinx beauty founders. Tell me about the yearly event that you do, how you're helping them, like your whole give back to that community.
Thank you. Thank you for referencing that. So yes, when I launched the brand, I immediately launched a Latinx beauty entrepreneur pitch competition, which offers a grant of some financial assistance that Valde supports, and mentorship and resources for the purpose of helping these brands succeed at retail, mainstream retail.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a continuation of the vision that I started when I joined Sephora, when I entered into the beauty space, right? I just thought to myself, I want to see myself represented. And when I first started, there were not Latina beauty brands coming through our door. Really, the crying need and priority at the time was to really address the Black community. And so I spent many, many years working to influence that and nurturing and scouting and helping Black brands succeed, and no different than we did for many other brands. But that was the beginning. And when I left, by the time I left, there were still no Latina beauty brands. In fact, I went out and created, we certainly had a lot of Asian brands and
Mhm.
Southeast Asian brands,
Yeah.
but I went out and created a brand called Cap on D,
Mhm.
um,
But huge.
who was
Yeah.
which was huge.
Yeah.
It was just game changing in terms of how much it galvanized the Sephora teams, and also because it brought in a consumer into Sephora that had never entered into Sephora
Right.
before, and that really was the objective of that evolution, that evolutionary period. But once again, even though it was successful, there were no Latina beauty brands. So what has happened really in the last 5, 6 years, there's been an emergence. Many of us as Latinas, were raised to aspire to Eurocentric brands.
Mm-hmm.
And we, as a culture, we've never been too proud of our culture, to be perfectly honest. Most of us in my generation, have wanted to blend in.
Yeah.
And
So
now we
many
have this
Mhm.
emerging generation, God bless them, who are so proud of their heritage, and they have wanted to see representation. And so they have they have influenced the creation of many, many, many brands through their perspective and through their lens, was just a beautiful thing. And so, no different than me seeing the way I used to see as a chief merchant before, as a head of merchandising. I see this enormous emergence, which is happening in pop culture. It's happening in food. It's in entertainment. It's happening in across the board. And this wave, it's a groundswell moment that is about to happen in the beauty space, and rightly so, because as a consumer, we over-index in our consumption.
Yep.
We're the largest growing minority demographic, and there must be, at last count, I figure there must be at least 200 Latina beauty brands that are emerging. And so the wave is coming. And if you don't notice anything else, the fact that there are this community of women that want to see us celebrated, our culture celebrated, and beauty done just as competitive as any other beauty brand, but through our lens, it's just a beautiful thing. And so what has happened is that I thought I would support them, but the inflection point has been is that my competition winners, have not been able to make it through beauty retail, mainstream retail, despite my best efforts, and by the way, despite my influence.
Yeah.
And so it's raised some bigger issues
Yeah.
around that, which, I have risen to the occasion and I'm pivoting this year. Instead of supporting one brand winner, one founder, I feel now compelled to really support the community. And
Yeah.
I think it's time. It's time to really create this tide that rises all boats. And so I'm in the process of forming a coalition and partnering with a gal on creating a platform that can be a headquarters for anyone for Latinas in beauty, to register so that we can raise voice, raise awareness, and really organized amongst ourselves to create those opportunities that we want to see happen.
I mean, I think that is a groundswell that is, at first, I don't know how many people know this, but if you've been in the Latin market at all, they way, Latinas, like Hispanic, way over index in beauty. They're bigger buyers in beauty, hair, beauty, all color cosmetics, skincare, hair care. They over
The
index
word
every
perfume.
perfume, every other demographic. They are by far the
Uh,
biggest
yeah.
across those categories. So, um, I don't know what wake up call retailers need, but like, hello, they're already there. I think that groundswell bringing them together is going to be amazing and create kind of this monster movement
Yeah.
that's really needed because there's a change that's required in the market, and I would love to see at, Cosmoprof or any of the big, you know,
Shows.
foundational, events and women in beauty, these events, having specific space set aside for you and those very talented creators to really talk about why this is the next generation. You thought you loved Korean skincare and eye mask. Guess what? You ain't seen nothing yet.
Just wait.
Just
I mean, and
just wait.
the irony is that there's a beautiful brand out there, called Sol de Janeiro. I mean, you're
Yeah,
living under a rock if you don't know who that brand is.
yeah,
Inspired
yeah,
by Brazil, and there you go. It's an enormous brand, super super popular, and there's a great example of what celebrating our culture looks like
yeah,
in a very successful way. And so that's the way to do it. That's the opportunity, and it's an opportunity for everyone. This is not Latinas for Latinas. Yes, it is in creating the ecosystem,
right.
but this is an opportunity. Sol de Janeiro is not owned by a Latina. So,
Mhm.
what we want, we don't necessarily are asking for, appropriation, but we want to we want people to wake up to the opportunity that it's major.
Yeah, it's major. I mean, I would love to see, like, behind the music, at like music conferences, Billboard, whatever happens to be, a whole, like, backstage beauty with
Totally.
all Latina products and brands being used
Totally.
on Latina
Totally.
and Latin artists. Like, that would make so much sense, like, as a highlight for that. Well, maybe we'll get to that. Um, how do people get a hold of you? Because I know there's gonna be this mad rush of emails I'm gonna be getting. How do we talk to her? If you can give us the information on how to get a hold of you, email and your website again, that would be great.
Yeah, so my website is valdebeauty.com. And my best way really is my Instagram handle, which is Margarita Arriagada. It's very original, but it's easy to find me for the purpose of finding me. And there is a platform called Latinas in Beauty. I think the handle is Latinas in Beauty Official, which is the only Latinas in Beauty community platform. And I would absolutely join and follow that platform because we're going to steer much of the communication, the efforts through that platform. But if you're a Latina in the beauty industry, I want to know you. I want to know you because part of the opportunity is that we need to unite as a community. We're a little bit more. I know that you understand Spanish, so you'll understand this, but we, as a culture, we're quiet.
Mhm.
And because we've been raised to be calladitas se ven más bonitas,
Yeah, that's it.
quiet, when you're quieter, you look pretty. And so
Yeah,
many of us need to come out of our shell. And I'm speaking for self.
Mm.
because I'm definitely coming out of my comfort level with this, but I'm impassioned. This is the full circle moment. I joined Sephora to help improve the cultural representation, and and I need to do it for my community. So I'm on the mission.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and on the video
Thank
show. I
you.
really, really appreciate it. My audience is going to go bananas for you as usual, as I am bananas for you too.
Thank you
And
so much. The feeling is mutual. Thank you for the support for our community. You are our Latina sister. You really
an
are.
unofficial Latina sister. That's for
Unofficial Latina sister,
that's
you
for sure.
really are. And I'm so grateful. I mean, on behalf of many of us, I just, want to thank you and share the flowers, because you give me the strength. You are win, for us. And I'm really, really grateful.
Thank you so much, Margarita. The feeling is very mutual. You're tearing me up. Thanks so
Thank
much for
you.
being on the show.
Thank you.